do you see that's where the industry is going, is sort of more to more a continuous dynamic risk assessment approach?
Yeah, like I think just first kind of starting with your really good points on a risk-based approach. I mean, risk-based approach was something that was said a lot, but not necessarily explored, because the answer with a risk-based approach is you can do whatever you want as long as you don't stop doing anything else. And I think guidance from the U.S. government and agencies, and we're seeing similar things from international bodies like Wolfsburg, which again is made of the large banks, but also from foreign governments who realize that the effectiveness piece also, you can't not talk about efficiency because there's no endless resource here. So I'm generally really bullish on ability to implement a risk-based approach. I am probably not a complete outlier, but I'm probably more bullish than others. And I understand that many of my colleagues at other institutions, if you're going through an enforcement action, if you just got out one, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I hear. I'd love to do that, but I just can't quite do that now. There's also a culture based on years of very expensive investment and enforcement and regulatory action by regulators around the world that have taught people, like, don't put your hand on the stove, don't take the risk. It's always better. But the trouble is like, it's what I here's the opportunity. I see that what people are finally getting to is how much we're missing because of the effectiveness issue. When law enforcement returns on the SARs are in single digits or very, very, very low double digits, that would indicate that we're doing a lot of work for not much. And also in the past, technology was not particularly nimble. You needed to have coders or you needed to pay someone to do it. If you said, well, I'm in these states or these countries, or I bank these particular types of customers, that was a custom job and it's very expensive. And it was great for the vendors because they could, charge a lot of hours or bring in consultants to help them with that. And it was very sticky. But I think all the technology we use, the ability to change, whether it's your mobile phone or to change the existing platforms between vendors, and more importantly, just to tweak what you have to be more nimble, is starting with the tech to be much faster. And it's easier to have multiple vendors if you need to, in a way that would have created IT and legal problems that kind of made it a good idea for financial crime fighting, but not so good from a financial perspective, from a bank or P&L or risk. There still is a culture across a lot of banks, which is why I'm really encouraged with Wolfsburg, which I was part of in a previous role, and particularly the governments that are getting out there. And they're doing two things. They're acknowledging, not quite as strongly as we like in the U.S., the notice of proposed rulemaking that's out there. Kind of feels like a rearranging of the furniture and not a brand new house for us to live in, but it's still using the right words, which is there's an acknowledgement that you can do less in some areas if you want to do more in the others. I think some of that culture of I'm not doing that because it was such a slow pace of change over the last 10 or 15 years. The tech is starting to show us things. Like you can play with Copilot and see stuff that, with a spreadsheet or just using your eyes reading through things you couldn't have done in years. And I think even the BSA officers who are on the more conservative end of the spectrum, sometimes with very, very good reason, are very clear that there's a better thing to do here. So I feel good about it. I think speed is good. I mean, you mentioned risk assessments, and I mean, most banks produce by really more out of habit and tradition these massive risk assessments. Some of them can run into 100 or more pages. They're a college term paper. They're about something that already happened. So many of us sit in meetings where we are reporting, things that we observed in Q1 in the Q1 of the following year. And risk ratings have already changed, but you still have a point in time. And that's driven by two things. One is the very labor intensive approach, because a lot of this is manually done, and extracting data to prove your point. The less data you have, the less dynamic it is, the more words you have to use. That means someone sitting down and typing a lot of things. And it's interviewing lots of business people. What we're doing at Fifth Third is kind of saying, like, when people read these things, like, what do they react to? And they react to, on the positive side, the fact that financial crime is a horizontal function. So it's one of the few places in a big company that all the businesses are there, the support functions, the infrastructure are there. But if it's very, very slow, the other thing is, like, it's great. I'm glad you have it, but if it's out of date, why did you put all this time into it? And it's kind of a more of a formal governance process that is probably making regulators happier. It's almost like a how-to guide for your regulator, more than what a risk assessment should be, which is an up-to-date, dynamic view.